I smooth the wrinkles from my navy blue dress and check my reflection one more time in the rearview mirror. My hands are trembling slightly, not from nerves about the wedding, but from pure excitement. After months of planning, today is finally the day I get to watch my son David marry the woman of his dreams. I've dreamed of this moment since he was a little boy, imagining how proud I'd feel watching him say his vows, how I'd cry happy tears as he started this new chapter of his life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Rosewood Country Club looks absolutely stunning in the late afternoon sun. White roses and ivy cascade down the entrance columns, and I can hear the gentle murmur of guests gathering on the terrace. I've driven 3 hours from Millbrook to be here, leaving my catering business in capable hands for the weekend. Nothing was going to make me miss David's wedding day. I grab my purse and the small gift I've wrapped so carefully, a vintage watch that belonged to his grandfather, my late husband Michael. David always loved hearing stories about his father, and I know this watch will mean the world to him. As I walk toward the entrance, I can't help but smile thinking about how handsome he must look in his tuxedo right now. The doorman nods politely as I approach, and I'm about to tell him I'm here for the Morrison-Blackwell wedding, when I see a familiar figure rushing toward me. It's David, but something's wrong. His face is flushed, and he's walking with that hurried pace he gets when he's anxious about something. "Mom," he says, slightly out of breath, "what are you doing here?" I laugh, thinking he's joking. "What do you mean, what am I doing here? It's your wedding day, sweetheart. I wouldn't miss this for the world." But David isn't laughing. His expression is serious, almost pained, and my stomach starts to sink. "Mom, listen, there's been a misunderstanding. The guest list was very limited, and Amanda's family had very specific requirements about the venue capacity." I stare at him, not understanding what he's trying to say. "David, what are you talking about? I'm your mother. Of course I'm invited to your wedding." He runs his hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up slightly. "Mom, I'm sorry, but you weren't actually invited. The Blackwells wanted a very intimate ceremony, just immediate family and close friends from our social circle. It's nothing personal, it's just—" The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually take a step backward, my hand instinctively reaching for the stone pillar beside me for support. I wasn't invited to my own son's wedding, standing there in my carefully chosen dress, holding a gift for a son who apparently doesn't want me at the most important day of his life. I feel like the ground has opened up beneath my feet. This is my David, the little boy I raised alone after his father died when he was only 8 years old. The boy I worked 3 jobs to put through private school. The young man I sacrificed everything for so he could have the opportunities I never had. "David Michael Morrison," I say, using his full name the way I did when he was in trouble as a child. "You need to explain to me right now what's going on." He glances nervously back toward the terrace where I can hear laughter and the gentle clink of champagne glasses. "Mom, please don't make a scene. This is already complicated enough. Amanda's parents have very specific ideas about appearances, and they wanted the wedding to reflect a certain image." "What kind of image?" I ask, though I'm starting to understand, and the realization is breaking my heart. "Look, you know I love you, but your catering business, the way you talk, where you're from, it doesn't exactly fit with the Blackwell family expectations. Amanda's father is a federal judge, her mother sits on the boards of 3 different charities, they move in very elite circles. I feel like I've been slapped, so you're ashamed of me." "It's not that simple," David says quickly, but he won't meet my eyes. "It's just that Amanda and I have worked so hard to establish ourselves in Springfield society. We have to think about our future, our careers, the connections that matter." I look at my son, really look at him, and I see a stranger. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Gone is the boy who used to help me in the kitchen of Joyce's catering, who would proudly tell his teachers about his mom's delicious food and how hard she worked. This man in the expensive tuxedo, with his perfectly styled hair and his talk of society and connections, feels like someone I don't even know. "David, I built my business from nothing, so you could have everything. When your father died, I could have given up, could have moved back in with my parents and lived on Social Security. Instead, I started Joyce's Catering with a borrowed $1,000 and a dream. I worked 18-hour days, missed sleep, missed social events, missed dating opportunities, all so you could have the best education, the best clothes, the best opportunities. I know, Mom, and I'm grateful for all of that, but what? But now that you've made it into their world, you don't want any reminders of where you came from? David shifts uncomfortably, adjusting his tie. Amanda's family has been very generous with us. Her father helped me get the position at Blackwell Stern and Associates. Her mother introduced us to all the right people. We have to be mindful of their expectations. I think about all the times over the past 2 years when David's visits became less frequent, when our phone calls grew shorter and more distant, how he stopped bringing friends home to Millbrook, stopped talking about his work in detail, stopped asking about the catering business that had paid for his entire life. I thought he was just busy with his new job, his new relationship. I never imagined he was systematically erasing me from his life. "Where did you tell them I was?" I ask quietly. David silences answer enough, but I press him. "David, where did you tell Amanda's family your mother was?" "I told them you were deceased," he whispers, and the words are so shocking that I actually gasp out loud. "You told them I was dead?" It seemed easier than trying to explain the situation. Amanda's family has very traditional values about family backgrounds and social standing. Her father specifically asked about my family connections during the engagement dinner, and I panicked. I lean heavily against the stone pillar, feeling dizzy. My own son has killed me off rather than admit I exist. So I'm dead to the Blackwells, and now I'm literally dead to you too. Mom, please don't be dramatic. It's just for appearances. Once Amanda and I are more established, once we have our own place in society, things can be different. Different how? Are you going to resurrect me for your children? Tell them their grandmother was just hiding for a few years? David looks genuinely distressed now, but not, I realize, because he's hurt me. He is distressed because this conversation is taking too long, because other guests might notice, because his carefully constructed facade is in danger of cracking. I have to get back, he says. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Mom, I'm sorry it has to be this way, but please, just go home. I'll call you next week and we can talk about all of this. Next week? I laugh, but there's no humor in it. David, this is your wedding day. This is supposed to be one of the most important days of your life. And you're asking your mother to leave because you're embarrassed by her. I'm not embarrassed by you, he says. But we both know it's a lie. Yes, you are. You're so embarrassed by the woman who sacrificed everything for you that you'd rather tell people she's dead than admit she runs a catering company in a small town. I look at the gift in my hands, the vintage watch I've been saving for this moment for over a year. I think about all the times I held this watch, imagining the look on David's face when I gave it to him, imagining how touched he'd be to have this piece of his father with him as he started his new life. I brought you your grandfather's watch, I say, holding out the small wrapped box. I thought you'd want to wear it today, to have a piece of your father with you. David takes the box reluctantly, and for a moment his mask slips. I see a flicker of the boy I raised, the son who used to curl up next to me on the couch while I told him stories about his father. But then his face hardens again. Thank you, he says formally, like I'm a distant acquaintance rather than the woman who gave birth to him. I should really get back now. David, I say as he starts to turn away, do you remember when you were 12 and you wanted to quit piano lessons because the other kids said it wasn't cool? He stops, looking back at me with confusion. What does that have to do with anything? I told you that day that being true to yourself was more important than what other people thought. I told you that the people who really mattered would love you for who you were, not for who you pretended to be. Do you remember what you said to me? David's jaw tightens. Mom, I really can't do this right now. You said, but what if who I really am isn't good enough? And I told you that you were more than good enough, that you were extraordinary, and that anyone who couldn't see that didn't deserve to be in your life. I can see that my words are affecting him, but he shakes his head. That was different, I was just a kid. And now you're a man who's decided that the woman who raised him isn't good enough for his new life. The woman who worked 3 jobs to pay for your piano lessons, your college tuition, your law school applications. The woman who sat up all night when you had pneumonia, who drove 8 hours to move you out of your first apartment, who sent care packages every month of your first year at work. Mom, stop! The woman who you just told me you've killed off to your fiancé's family because you're so ashamed of where you came from. David's face is red now, whether from embarrassment or anger, I can't tell. You're being unfair. You don't understand the pressures I'm under, the expectations. Oh, I understand expectations, David. I understand them better than you think. I had expectations too. I expected that the son I raised would grow up to be a man of character, someone who would be proud of his family, someone who wouldn't abandon the people who loved him the moment it became convenient. I can hear music starting from the terrace, the gentle strains of a string quartet. The ceremony is about to begin, and my son is going to walk down that aisle and pledge his life to a woman whose family thinks his mother is dead. I expected, I continue, my voice growing stronger despite the tears I feel building, that when this day came, I'd be sitting in the front row crying happy tears as I watched my son start his new life. I expected that your children would know their grandmother, would come to my house for holidays, would be proud to tell their friends about the woman who built a business from nothing. I expected that love would matter more than appearances. David looks genuinely anguished now, but he still doesn't apologize, still doesn't invite me to stay. Mom, I'm sorry, but this is just how it has to be right now. Maybe someday. Someday, I interrupt, you'll realize that the people who ask you to hide your family, to be ashamed of where you came from, to choose their approval over your mother's love, aren't the kind of people worth impressing. I hand him back the gift box. Keep your grandfather's watch, but remember that he was a man who never once in his life was ashamed of his family, no matter what anyone else thought. David takes the box, and for a moment, I think he might change his mind, might ask me to stay, might remember that he's supposed to love me more than he fears what other people think. But then I hear a woman's voice calling his name from the terrace. David, darling, where are you? We're about to start. The voice is cultured, refined, with the kind of accent that comes from expensive private schools and summers in Martha's Vineyard. Amanda's voice, the voice of the woman my son loves more than he loves me. I have to go, David says, and there's finality in his voice. I'll call you later this week. No, I say quietly, you won't. He looks at me with confusion. What do you mean? I mean that I'm done, David. I'm done begging for scraps of affection from a son who's ashamed of me. I'm done accepting phone calls when it's convenient for you and being shut out when it's not. I'm done being the mother you keep hidden in a small town while you live your real life with people who matter. Mom, you're being dramatic again. I'm being honest for the first time in years. I've spent so long making excuses for your behavior, telling myself you were just busy, just focused on your career, just trying to fit in. But the truth is, you've made a choice, and that choice is that I don't belong in your life. David looks stricken. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you visited me in Millbrook? When was the last time you brought a friend to meet me? When was the last time you talked about me to anyone in your new life as something other than an embarrassment to be hidden? He can't answer because we both know the truth. David! Amanda's voice again, closer now, more urgent. Go, I tell him. Go marry your perfect woman and live your perfect life with your perfect new family. But don't call me next week with apologies and excuses. Don't send me pictures of your children that I'll never be allowed to meet. Don't pretend that this isn't exactly what you wanted. Mom, please. Goodbye, David. I turn and walk away before he can say another word, before I can see the look in his eyes, before I can change my mind and beg him to let me stay, to let me sit in the back row where no one will notice me, to let me be invisible if that's what it takes to be part of his life. As I walk back to my car, I can hear the wedding march beginning to play. In a few minutes, my son will be married, and I won't be there to see it. His children will grow up thinking their paternal grandmother is dead, and in a way, I suppose I am. The mother who sacrificed everything for David Morrison died today in the parking lot of the Rosewood Country Club, killed by the son she loved more than her own life. I sit in my car for a long time, watching other guests' cars pull away after the ceremony ends. I see elegant couples in expensive clothes, laughing and chatting as they head to the reception. I wonder which of them David introduced as his family now, which of them he's proud to claim. The sun is setting by the time I finally start my car and begin the long drive back to Millbrook. Back to my empty house, my successful business, my life that apparently isn't good enough for the man I raised. Back to a world where I'll have to figure out how to live with the knowledge that the most important person in my life would rather pretend I'm dead than admit I exist. But as I drive through the gathering darkness, something begins to shift inside me. The crushing pain is still there, but underneath it, I feel something else stirring. Something that feels almost like relief. Because for the first time in years, I don't have to wonder why David seems distant, why his calls are shorter, why his visits are less frequent. I don't have to make excuses for his behavior or blame myself for not being good enough. I know the truth now, and the truth, painful as it is, has set me free. The drive back to Millbrook feels endless. Every mile marker seems to mock me, counting down the distance between me and the son who just discarded me like yesterday's newspaper. My hands grip the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles have turned white, and I have to keep blinking back tears that threaten to blur my vision. I keep replaying the conversation over and over in my mind, searching for signs I should have seen, clues that would have prepared me for this moment. How long has David been planning this deception? How many conversations has he had with Amanda where they discussed the problem of his mother? How many times has he rehearsed the story of my fictional death? The worst part isn't even that he excluded me from his wedding. The worst part is how easily the lies rolled off his tongue, how prepared he seemed for this conversation, as if he'd been practicing what he'd say if I ever showed up somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision driven by wedding day jitters. This was calculated, deliberate, planned. By the time I reach my house on Maple Street, it's completely dark. The porch light I left on this morning feels like a beacon, welcoming me back to a life that suddenly seems smaller and lonelier than it ever has before. I sit in my driveway for several minutes, staring at the house Michael and I bought when David was just a toddler. We were so young then, so full of dreams about the family we'd build, the memories we'd create within these walls. I remember the day we planted the oak tree in the front yard, how Michael lifted 3-year-old David up to help him pat down the soil around the tiny sapling. "This tree will grow up with our boy," Michael had said, laughing as David got more dirt on himself than around the tree. "Someday he'll bring his own children here to play under its branches." Now that oak tree towers over the house, its branches, reaching toward my second-story windows, and David has decided his children will never know this place exists. Inside, the house feels different somehow, as if the very air has changed in the hours I've been gone. I walk through the familiar rooms, touching surfaces that suddenly feel foreign under my fingertips. The family photos scattered throughout the house catch my eye in a way they never have before. David's school pictures marching up the stairway wall, his graduation photos on the mantle, candid shots of us together at various stages of his life. I stop in front of my favorite picture, taken when David was 15 and had just won the state debate championship. He's holding his trophy with one arm and has the other wrapped around my shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera. I remember how proud he was that day, how he insisted the photographer take a picture of us together because he wanted everyone to know that his mom was his biggest supporter. "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom," he'd said that day. "You're the one who taught me to think for myself, to stand up for what I believe in, to never let anyone make me feel small." I touched the glass over his young face, and for a moment I can almost feel the weight of his arm around my shoulders, can almost hear his voice full of love and admiration instead of the cold dismissal I heard today. When did that boy disappear? When did the son who was proud of me become the man who's ashamed of me? My phone buzzes with a text message, and for one wild moment my heart leaps, thinking it might be David calling to apologize, to tell me he's made a terrible mistake, to beg me to come back. But it's just Ruth, my best friend and business partner, checking in. "How was the wedding? Send pictures. I want to see how handsome our boy looked in his tux." Our boy. Ruth has known David since he was 8 years old, has watched him grow up, has celebrated every milestone with us. She helped me through the dark days after Michael's funeral, was there when David graduated high school, college, law school. She's as much a part of his life as anyone, and she doesn't even know that he got married today because I wasn't there to witness it. I stare at her message for a long time, trying to figure out how to respond. How do you tell your best friend that your son didn't invite you to his wedding? How do you explain that the boy she helped raise would rather tell people his mother is dead than admit she exists? Finally, I type back. Long story. Can you come over tomorrow? I need to talk. Her response is immediate. Of course. Is everything okay? I don't answer, because I don't know how to put into words just how not okay everything is. I pour myself a glass of wine and sit on my back porch, looking out at the garden I've spent 20 years cultivating. The roses are just beginning to bloom, and their sweet scent fills the evening air. This is usually my favorite time of day, when the light is soft and golden and the world feels peaceful. But tonight, the beauty of it all just makes me feel more alone. I think about all the dreams I had for David's wedding day. I imagined helping him get ready, adjusting his tie, maybe sharing a quiet moment before the ceremony where we'd both get a little teary-eyed. I pictured myself in the front row, beaming with pride as he said his vows. I fantasized about the mother-son dance at the reception, about the toast I'd give welcoming Amanda into our family. Instead, David danced with Amanda's mother while I sat alone in my empty house, drinking wine and wondering where I went wrong. My phone rings, jolting me out of my thoughts. For a moment, my heart races again, but it's not David. It's my sister Ellen, calling from Phoenix. Joyce, how was the big day? I've been thinking about you all evening. I bet you cried your eyes out during the ceremony. Ellen's voice is so warm and excited that I almost start crying just hearing it. She's been looking forward to David's wedding almost as much as I have, constantly asking for updates about the planning, the venue, Amanda's dress. How do I tell her that none of it mattered because I wasn't there to see any of it? Ellen, I say, and my voice cracks on her name. Immediately, her tone changes. Honey, what's wrong? What happened? And suddenly, it all comes pouring out. The drive to the country club, the conversation with David, the devastating revelation that he's told. Amanda's family. I'm dead. Ellen listens without interrupting, and I can hear her sharp intake of breath when I get to the worst parts. That son of a bitch, she says when I finish, and despite everything, I almost smile. Ellen has never been one to mince words. Joyce, I am so sorry. I can't believe he would do this to you. I keep thinking I must have misunderstood something, I say. This can't be the same boy I raised. The David the first no would never… Stop, Ellen interrupts firmly. Don't you dare make excuses for him. What he did today was cruel and inexcusable, and you know it. But Ellen, what if I was wrong to just walk away? What if I should have fought harder, tried to make him understand? Understand what? That you're his mother? That you deserve basic respect and decency? Joyce, listen to me. You raised that boy to be better than this. If he's chosen to become someone who would treat his own mother this way, that's on him, not on you. I want to believe her, but the guilt is eating me alive. I should have seen the signs. The way he's been pulling away these past few years, the way he stopped talking about his life, stopped bringing friends around. I should have confronted him about it instead of just hoping things would get better. You were being a loving mother who trusted her son to do the right thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But maybe if I'd been different, if I'd been more successful, more sophisticated, more like the kind of mother the Blackwells would approve of. Joyce Marie Henderson, Ellen says, using my maiden name the way our mother used to when she wanted to get our attention. I'm going to stop you right there. You built a successful business from nothing. You raised a son alone after your husband died. You put that boy through the best schools, supported his dreams, sacrificed your own happiness to make sure he had every opportunity. There is nothing about you that isn't good enough for anyone, including some snooty judge and his wife. Her words hit something deep inside me, something that's been buried under years of worry about whether I was doing enough, being enough, giving enough. Then why wasn't I enough for David? Because David has forgotten who he is and where he came from. Because he's decided that impressing strangers is more important than loving the woman who gave him everything. Because he's become exactly the kind of person your husband would be ashamed of. The mention of Michael breaks something loose in my chest, and I start crying in earnest. Michael would hate what David's become, wouldn't he? Honey, Michael would be heartbroken. That man adored you, and he was so proud of the mother you were to David. He used to brag about you to anyone who would listen, about how strong you were, how determined, how you never gave up on anything you believed in. I remember Michael's voice, the way he used to introduce me at parties. This is my wife Joyce, and she's the strongest woman I've ever known. He never cared that I didn't come from money, never worried about what other people thought of my background or my job. He loved me exactly as I was, and he taught David to be proud of our family, to value substance over appearances. What would he tell me to do now? I whisper. Ellen is quiet for a moment. You know what he'd tell you. He'd tell you to hold your head high and remember your worth. He'd tell you that anyone who can't see how amazing you are doesn't deserve to be in your life, even if that someone is your own son. After we hang up, I sit in the darkness for a long time, thinking about Michael and the kind of man he was, the kind of father he'd been in the short time he had with David. Michael never would have tolerated the kind of behavior David showed today. He would have been appalled at the idea of hiding family members, of being ashamed of the people who loved you. I think about the business I've built, Joyce's Catering, and how proud I've always been of it. Starting with nothing but a $1,000 loan and a dream, I've created something that employs 12 people and serves clients throughout the county. We've catered everything from intimate dinner parties to corporate events for 500 people. Last year alone, we grossed over $500,000. But more than the financial success, I'm proud of the reputation we've built. People don't just hire Joyce's Catering for the food, though everyone agrees it's exceptional. They hire us because they know we'll treat their event like it's the most important day of their lives. We've catered weddings where the bride's grandmother requested her late husband's favorite cookies, and we tracked down the recipe and made them by hand. We've stayed late at corporate events to make sure every detail was perfect, even when it meant working through the night. I've built something meaningful, something that brings joy to people during their most important moments, and my son is ashamed of it. The next morning, I wake up on the couch where I fell asleep sometime after midnight, still wearing my navy dress from yesterday. My neck is stiff, my eyes are swollen from crying, and for a moment I forget why I feel so heavy, so broken. Then it all comes rushing back. The wedding. The conversation with David. The realization that my son would rather tell people I'm dead than admit I exist. I force myself to shower and put on clean clothes, though every movement feels like I'm moving through thick mud. I make coffee and toast, though I can barely taste either. By the time Ruth arrives at 10 o'clock, I've managed to pull myself together enough to look human, though I suspect she'll see right through the facade. Ruth takes one look at my face and wraps me in a fierce hug. "Oh, honey," she says. "What did that boy do?" Ruth has been my best friend for 15 years, ever since she moved to Millbrook and hired me to cater her housewarming party. She was going through a messy divorce at the time, starting over in a new town with just her daughter Emma, and we bonded over the challenges of rebuilding our lives. When I decided to expand the catering business 5 years ago, Ruth came on as my business partner, bringing her background in event planning and her natural gift for making people feel special. She's seen me through every crisis, every triumph, every moment of doubt about whether I'm doing right by David. She's the one who encouraged me to buy the house when I was afraid to take on a mortgage, the one who pushed me to apply for the loan that let us expand the business, the one who's always believed in my abilities even when I didn't believe in them myself. I tell her everything, and unlike my conversation with Ellen, this time I don't break down. The tears have been replaced by something harder, something that feels almost like anger. Ruth listens with growing incredulity, and by the time I finish, her face is flushed with rage. "That ungrateful little shit," she says, and coming from Ruth, who rarely uses profanity, the words carry extra weight. "Joyce, I am so angry I could spit nails. How dare he treat you this way? How dare he be ashamed of the woman who gave him everything?" I keep thinking about all the times I made excuses for him, I say. All the times he canceled visits at the last minute, or cut phone calls short, or seemed uncomfortable when I asked about his life. I told myself he was just busy, just focused on his career. You were being a loving mother. You were giving him the benefit of the doubt because that's what good parents do. But I should have seen it, Ruth. I should have realized he was pulling away, that he was embarrassed by me. Ruth reaches across the table and grabs my hands. Joyce, listen to me very carefully. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. You raised a boy to be proud of his family, to value loyalty and love over appearances and status. If he's chosen to become someone different, someone who would betray the woman who sacrificed everything for him, that's his failure, not yours. I want to believe her, but the guilt is overwhelming. What kind of mother raises a child who would do something like this? A mother who loved too much and expected too little in return, Ruth says gently. Joyce, you've spent 20 years putting David's needs before your own. You've made excuses for his selfishness, covered for his thoughtlessness, always given him the benefit of the doubt. And he's learned that he can treat you however he wants, because you'll always forgive him, always make excuses, always be there when he needs something. Her words sting because they're true. I think about all the times I've covered for David's bad behavior, all the times I've made excuses when he disappointed other people, all the times I've put his comfort above my own needs. Remember his high school graduation party? Ruth continues. When he told you he didn't want any of his classmates coming to the house because it wasn't nice enough, and you agreed to hold the party at the country club instead, even though it cost you 3 months' profit? I remember. David had been mortified at the thought of his friends seeing our modest house, our mismatched furniture, our small backyard. So I'd spent thousands of dollars. I didn't really have to throw him a party at the fanciest venue in town, telling myself it was because I wanted his graduation to be special. Or when he started college and asked you not to mention the catering business to his roommates because it was embarrassing, Ruth goes on. And you agreed, even though you were working 16-hour days to pay his tuition. That memory is even more painful. David had been so worried about what his new friends would think if they knew his mother worked in food service. As if feeding people and bringing joy to their celebrations was something shameful. And I'd gone along with it, telling myself that college was a time for him to figure out who he wanted to be. I enabled him, I say quietly. I taught him that it was okay to be ashamed of me as long as he did it quietly. You loved him, Ruth corrects. Sometimes love makes us do things that aren't good for the people we love. But Joyce, it's not too late to change that pattern. What do you mean? Ruth leans forward, her expression intense. I mean, it's time to stop making excuses for David's behavior. It's time to stop accepting crumbs of affection from someone who should be giving you the world. It's time to remember who you are and what you're worth. But he's my son, Ruth. I can't just cut him out of my life. I'm not saying you should cut him out. I'm saying you should stop accepting unacceptable behavior. David made a choice yesterday. He chose his new family's approval over his mother's love. He chose appearances over authenticity. He chose to protect his image, rather than protect your heart. I think about David's face yesterday, the way he looked at me like I was an inconvenience to be managed, rather than the woman who raised him. He looked at me like I was nothing, I whisper. Then it's time to show him that you're not nothing. It's time to show him that you're someone who deserves respect and love and basic human decency. How do I do that? Ruth smiles, and there's something fierce in her expression. You start by remembering who Joyce Henderson Morrison is. You're a woman who built a successful business from scratch. You're a mother who raised a son alone after losing the love of her life. You're someone who brings joy and comfort to people during their most important moments. You're strong, you're talented, you're generous, and you're worthy of love and respect. I feel something stirring in my chest, something that's been buried under years of worry and guilt and self-doubt. You really believe that? I know it. And it's time you knew it too. Ruth stays for the rest of the day, and we spend the time going through photo albums, talking about the business, making plans for upcoming events. Slowly, I start to remember who I am when I'm not defining myself as David's mother. I'm Joyce Morrison, owner of the most successful catering company in 3 counties. I'm a woman who's employed dozens of people over the years, who's fed thousands of families, who's helped create memories that will last lifetimes. I'm someone who matters, even if my son has forgotten that. As Ruth is getting ready to leave, she turns to me with a serious expression. Joyce, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. Okay, if David called you right now and apologized, if he begged you to forgive him and invited you to meet Amanda, would you go? I start to answer immediately, but she holds up her hand. Really think about it. Would you go back to accepting whatever scraps of attention he's willing to give you? Would you go back to making excuses for his behavior? To pretending that what he did was forgivable? I consider her question carefully. The truth is, part of me would run to David in a heartbeat if he showed the slightest sign of remorse. The mother in me wants to forgive him, to find a way to rebuild our relationship, to have my son back in my life. But another part of me, a part that's been growing stronger all day, knows that going back to the way things were would be a betrayal of everything I've worked for, everything I've built, everything I am. I don't know, I say honestly. I want to say I'd make him earn my forgiveness, that I'd demand respect and change. But I'm scared I'd just be so grateful to have him back that I'd accept anything. Ruth nods. That's an honest answer. And it's exactly why you need to take some time to figure out what you want your life to look like, with or without David in it. After she leaves, I sit in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of my day with Ruth. Photo albums spread across the coffee table, business files scattered on the floor, the remains of the dinner she insisted on cooking for me. For the first time since yesterday, I don't feel completely empty. I pick up one of the photo albums and flip through it slowly. Pictures of catering events over the years, satisfied clients, beautiful food displays, moments of triumph and joy. I've been so focused on David, so consumed with being the mother he needed, that I'd almost forgotten about the other life I've built, the other identity I have. I am Joyce Morrison, and I am worth more than the treatment I received yesterday. The realization doesn't take away the pain of David's betrayal, but it gives me something to hold on to. Something solid and real and mine. Tomorrow I'll have to figure out how to move forward, how to rebuild my sense of self, how to create a life that doesn't revolve around earning my son's love and approval. But tonight, for the first time in 24 hours, I feel like maybe I can. My phone buzzes with a text message, and instinctively I check it, hoping despite everything that it might be David. But it's not. It's Emma, Ruth's daughter, who's been like a niece to me over the years. Mom told me what happened. I'm so sorry, Aunt Joyce. David doesn't deserve you. Love you. I smile through my tears. Emma is right. David doesn't deserve me, and maybe it's time I started acting like I know that. 3 weeks pass before I hear from David again. 3 weeks of waking up each morning with a hollow ache in my chest. 3 weeks of checking my phone compulsively. 3 weeks of jumping every time it rings. Ruth keeps telling me that no news is good news, that David's silence proves he knows he was wrong and is too cowardly to face what he's done. But deep down, I keep hoping for some sign that my son remembers he has a mother who loves him. The call comes on a Tuesday evening while I'm reviewing invoices for a corporate luncheon we're catering next week. When I see David's name on my phone screen, my heart lurches so violently I actually drop the papers I'm holding. Hello, David, I say, proud that my voice sounds steadier than I feel. Mom? His voice is different somehow, strained and tired. How are you? The casual tone, as if he's calling to chat about the weather, sends a spike of anger through me. I'm fine, David. How's married life? There's a long pause. It's good. Amanda and I are settling in well. We had a beautiful honeymoon in Tuscany. I want to ask him about the wedding I wasn't allowed to attend, about the reception where someone else sat in the mother of the groom's chair, about whether he thought of me at all during what should have been one of the happiest days of his life. Instead, I wait for him to tell me why he's calling. Mom, I've been thinking about our conversation at the wedding, and I realize I may have handled things poorly. As if excluding your mother from your wedding is just a minor social misstep, like forgetting to send a thank you note. Is that what you're calling it? Handling things poorly? Another pause. Look, I know you were hurt, and I'm sorry about that, but I hope you can understand the position I was in. Amanda's family has very specific expectations, and I had to respect their wishes for their daughter's wedding. Their daughter's wedding. Not our wedding, not his wedding, but Amanda's family's wedding. I close my eyes and count to 5 before responding. David, you told them I was dead. I know that sounds bad, but it was just easier than trying to explain the whole situation. Amanda's parents are very traditional, very focused on social standing and family connections. They wouldn't have understood about your business, about our background. Our background. As if growing up in a loving home with a mother who worked hard to provide for him is something shameful that needs explaining. What wouldn't they have understood exactly? Mom, come on, you know what I mean. The catering business, the small town thing, the fact that you didn't go to college. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just not the world Amanda and I live in now. I feel something cold and hard settling in my stomach. The world you live in now. Yes, I've worked very hard to establish myself in Springfield, to build relationships with the right people, to create opportunities for advancement. Amanda and I have a certain image to maintain. And I don't fit that image. It's not personal, Mom. It's just business. You understand business. The casual cruelty of his words takes my breath away. It's not personal. As if a mother-son relationship is just another business transaction, something to be managed for optimal outcomes. David, when your father died, I had a choice. I could have given up, moved back with my parents, lived on Social Security and life insurance. Instead, I chose to build something, to create a business that would give you opportunities I never had. I worked 18-hour days, missed sleep, missed social events, missed opportunities for companionship, all so you could have the best education, the best clothes, the best chances in life. And I'm grateful for all of that, Mom. I really am. But surely you can understand that there comes a time when a person has to think about their future, their career, their place in society. Your place in society. I repeat his words slowly, tasting the bitterness of them. And where exactly is your mother's place in this society you've built? Mom, don't be dramatic. I'm not saying you don't have a place. I'm just saying that for now, while Amanda and I are establishing ourselves, it's better if we keep certain aspects of our backgrounds private. Private. He wants to keep me private, hidden away like some embarrassing family secret. David, let me ask you something. When Amanda's parents asked about your family, when you told them I was dead, how did you explain your upbringing? Who raised the successful lawyer they're so proud of? I can hear him shifting uncomfortably. I told them I was raised by my father's sister after my parents died in a car accident. Aunt Margaret was very well educated, very proper. She made sure I had all the advantages. Aunt Margaret. He's invented an entire fictional guardian, someone refined and educated and suitable, someone the Blackwells would approve of, someone completely unlike me. And what happened to this fictional Aunt Margaret? She died when I was in college. Very sad, but it explained why I didn't have any family at the wedding. The casual way he recounts this elaborate lie, as if he's discussing the plot of a movie rather than the systematic erasure of his own mother, makes me feel physically sick. David, do you hear yourself? Do you understand what you've done? You've not only excluded me from your life, you've replaced me with someone imaginary, someone more acceptable to your new family. Mom, I know it sounds harsh, but surely you can see that this is better for everyone. You don't have to deal with the pressure of fitting into Amanda's world, and I don't have to worry about complications. Complications. That's what I am to my son now. A complication to be managed. I think about all the dreams I had for this moment, for the day David would call to tell me about his new wife, his new life, his plans for the future. I imagined him asking for advice, sharing stories from the honeymoon, maybe even talking about children and the kind of grandmother I might be someday. Instead, he's calling to explain why I need to remain dead to the people who matter to him. David, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. Are you happy? The question seems to catch him off guard. What do you mean? I mean, are you happy living this lie? Are you happy being married to someone whose family you had to lie to in order to win their approval? Are you happy being the kind of man who would deny his own mother's existence? Mom, you're making this much more complicated than it needs to be. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems pretty simple. You've decided that impressing strangers is more important than loving the woman who gave birth to you. You've decided that your social status matters more than your integrity. You've decided that I'm not good enough to be part of your life. That's not what I've decided at all. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. But love doesn't mean we can't be practical about certain situations. Practical. He wants to be practical about whether his mother exists. David, let me tell you what love means to me. Love means showing up. Love means being proud of the people who matter to you, even when it's inconvenient. Love means standing up for your family, not hiding them away like some shameful secret. You're being unreasonable. No, David, I'm being a mother. A real mother, not the fictional one you invented to make yourself more palatable to your in-laws. I can hear voices in the background, Amanda's voice calling his name. David, darling, dinner's ready. I have to go, he says quickly. But Mom, I hope you'll think about what I've said. This arrangement doesn't have to be permanent. Once Amanda and I are more established, once we have our own place in society, things can be different. Different how? Well, maybe we could gradually introduce the idea that I have some distant family, maybe a long-lost relative who's been living quietly somewhere. A long-lost relative. He wants to bring me back from the dead as some distant cousin, someone peripheral enough not to threaten his carefully constructed image. David, listen to me very carefully. I am not going to spend the rest of my life pretending to be someone I'm not, so that you can feel comfortable with your choices. I am not going to hide in the shadows waiting for permission to exist in my own son's life. Mom, please don't be hasty. I know this isn't ideal, but surely you can see that it's the best solution for everyone. The best solution for everyone. As if my complete erasure from his life is some kind of reasonable compromise. David, I say quietly, do you remember what you said to me at your law school graduation? What? You said, Mom, I promise I'll never forget where I came from or who helped me get here. I promise I'll always be proud to be your son. I can hear him breathing on the other end of the line, but he doesn't respond. You broke that promise, David. You didn't just forget where you came from, you've systematically erased it. You're not proud to be my son, you're ashamed of it. Mom, I'm not finished. For 28 years, I have loved you unconditionally. I have supported your dreams, celebrated your successes, made excuses for your failures. I have put your needs above my own, your happiness above my own, your future above my own. And in return, you have decided that I am not worthy of basic acknowledgement, let alone love and respect. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you visited me, David? When was the last time you asked about my business, my life, my dreams? When was the last time you treated me like a person whose feelings matter? He's quiet for a long moment. I've been busy. You've been busy erasing me from your life. There's a difference. Amanda's voice calls again, more insistent this time. David, the soufflé is falling. I really have to go, he says. But Mom, please think about what I've said. This doesn't have to be the end of our relationship. It just has to be different. You're right, I say. This doesn't have to be the end of our relationship. But if we're going to have any relationship at all, it's going to be on terms that respect my dignity and worth. I am not going to be your dirty little secret, David. I am not going to pretend to be dead so that you can live your perfect life. What does that mean? It means that if you want me in your life, I come as I am. Joyce Morrison, owner of Joyce's Catering, resident of Millbrook, proud mother of David Morrison. Not some fictional distant relative, not some embarrassing connection to be hidden away, but your mother, the woman who raised you, who sacrificed for you, who loved you even when you didn't deserve it. And if I can't do that, the question hangs between us like a blade. He's asking me to choose between accepting his terms and losing him entirely. He's asking me to decide whether having a son who's ashamed of me is better than having no son at all. 6 months ago, I would have chosen him. 6 months ago, I would have agreed to be his shameful secret, his hidden relative, his convenient fiction, just to maintain some connection to the child I raised. But something has changed in these past few weeks. Something Ruth said, something Ellen said, something I finally learned about my own worth. Then I guess you've made your choice, I say quietly. And I've made mine. Mom, wait! But I hang up before he can finish, before he can try to negotiate, before he can offer me some new version of invisibility disguised as compromise. I sit in my kitchen for a long time after the call ends, staring at the phone in my hands. Part of me wants to call him back, to apologize, to accept whatever crumbs of relationship he's willing to offer. The mother in me is screaming that I've just cut off my only child, that I've chosen pride over love, that I'll regret this for the rest of my life. But a stronger part of me, a part that's been growing every day since the wedding, knows that I've finally done something I should have done years ago. I've refused to accept unacceptable treatment. I've chosen my own dignity over my son's convenience. I've stopped making excuses for behavior that has no excuse. My phone rings again almost immediately, and David's name flashes on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He calls 3 more times over the next hour, leaving increasingly frustrated messages. Mom, please pick up. We need to talk about this. Mom, you're being unreasonable. Call me back. Mom, I don't understand why you're being so stubborn about this. It's not like I'm asking you to disappear forever. But that's exactly what he's asking. He wants me to disappear from his real life and exist only in the shadows, only when it's convenient for him, only when it doesn't threaten his carefully constructed image. I delete the messages without listening to them completely. The next morning, I wake up with a strange sense of lightness, as if I've been carrying a heavy weight for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. I make my coffee, check my emails, review the schedule for today's events. Joyce's Catering has 3 events this week: a retirement party for the town librarian, a graduation celebration for the high school valedictorian, and a golden wedding anniversary for a couple who've been together for 50 years. Real celebrations for real people, who are proud of their accomplishments, their families, their lives. People who don't need to hide parts of themselves to feel worthy of love and respect. I'm reviewing the menu for the anniversary party when Ruth arrives with coffee and pastries from the bakery downtown. You look different, she says, studying my face carefully. More settled somehow. David called last night. Her expression immediately sharpens. And? I tell her about the conversation, about his casual dismissal of my feelings, about his suggestion that I could someday be reintroduced as a distant relative, about his complete inability to understand why I might find his behavior hurtful. That arrogant little shit, Ruth says when I finish. I swear, Joyce, I don't know how you manage not to reach through the phone and throttle him. For a minute there, I almost considered agreeing to his terms. The thought of never seeing him again, never meeting his children, never being part of his life in any way. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Because I finally realized that the relationship he's offering isn't real. It's not love, it's not family, it's just another way for him to use me, while keeping me hidden away where I can't embarrass him. Ruth reaches across the table and squeezes my hand. I'm proud of you. Are you? Because part of me feels like I've just made the worst mistake of my life. What kind of mother chooses her pride over her relationship with her child? The kind of mother who finally realizes that what you had wasn't a real relationship. Joyce, for the past few years, David has treated you like a service provider, someone who exists to give him money, support, and unconditional approval, but who isn't entitled to respect, honesty, or basic courtesy in return. I think about all the conversations we've had in recent years, how they've become increasingly one-sided. David telling me about his successes, his problems, his needs, but never asking about mine. David accepting my financial help without question, but never wondering how I'm managing to provide it. David calling when he needs something, but rarely just to see how I'm doing. When did it become so unbalanced, I ask? I think it's been building for years, but you were so focused on being the perfect, supportive mother that you didn't see it happening. You were so afraid of losing him that you kept accepting less and less while giving more and more. And now I've lost him anyway. No, Ruth says firmly. Now you've refused to lose yourself. David is the one who's made the choice here. He's the one who's decided that his mother's love isn't worth preserving unless it comes with complete invisibility and shame. I know she's right, but the pain is still overwhelming. Ruth, what if I never see him again? What if he never calls, never writes, never tries to repair this? Then you'll know that you were right to protect yourself from someone who was never going to treat you with the love and respect you deserve. But he's my son, and you're his mother. If he chooses to throw that away because you won't let him hide you like some shameful secret, then he's not the man you raised him to be. I spend the rest of the day throwing myself into work, finalizing details for the upcoming events, meeting with potential new clients, reviewing our summer bookings. The familiar rhythm of business helps quiet the voice in my head that keeps telling me I've made a terrible mistake. That evening, I'm at home going through some old photo albums when I come across a picture that stops me cold. It's from David's 8th birthday, just a few months after Michael died. David is grinning at the camera, chocolate cakes smeared on his face, surrounded by the modest decorations I'd managed to put together on our tight budget. But what strikes me isn't David's face, it's my own. I look so young in the picture, so determined, so full of hope for our future. I'm looking at David with such pure love, such fierce protectiveness, such absolute certainty that everything I was doing was worth it, because it was for him. I remember that day, remember how proud David was of the party I'd thrown together, how he kept telling his friends that his mom made the best birthday cake in the world. He was so happy, so grateful, so full of love for the mother who was doing her best to make his life special despite our circumstances. When did that boy become the man who called me last night? When did my sweet son become someone who could look his mother in the eye and tell her that she wasn't good enough to acknowledge publicly? I closed the album and put it away. That little boy is gone, replaced by someone I barely recognize. And maybe it's time I stopped mourning for him and started living for the woman I am now, the woman I've become despite his rejection. My phone buzzes with a text message. For a moment, my heart leaps, but it's not David. It's Sarah Chen, a potential client who's planning her daughter's wedding for next fall. Hi, Joyce. I've been thinking about our conversation last week, and I'd love to schedule another meeting to discuss the menu. Your passion for creating special moments really impressed me. Are you available Thursday afternoon? I smile and type back that I'd be delighted to meet with her. Sarah Chen is planning a wedding where family matters, where tradition and love are more important than appearances, where the mother of the bride will be honored and celebrated rather than hidden away. It's the kind of event that reminds me why I love what I do, why I've built this business, why I'm good at creating joy for people during their most important moments. I am Joyce Morrison, and I have value that exists entirely independent of my son's approval. It's taken me 54 years to learn that lesson, but I've learned it now. And I'm not going back. 6 months pass without a word from David. 6 months of silence that feels both liberating and devastating. There are days when I wake up feeling light and free, grateful to be living authentically without constantly worrying about disappointing someone who was never truly satisfied anyway. Then there are days when the grief hits me like a physical blow, when I catch myself reaching for my phone to call him before remembering that we no longer speak. The business has never been better. Word of mouth has brought us clients from as far as 3 counties away, and we've booked solid through the next year. Sarah Chen's daughter's wedding was a tremendous success, and she's referred 4 other families to us. I've hired 2 new staff members, and we're considering expanding into wedding planning services, not just catering. But success feels hollow when you have no one to share it with. Ellen calls regularly from Phoenix, checking on me, celebrating my victories, listening when the loneliness becomes overwhelming. Ruth is a constant source of strength and friendship, reminding me daily that I made the right choice, that I'm worth more than the scraps of affection David was offering. Still, there are moments when I wonder if I was too harsh, too unforgiving. When I see mothers with their adult children at events I'm catering, laughing together, sharing stories, clearly enjoying each other's company, I feel a sharp pang of loss. Maybe I should have taken whatever relationship David was willing to give me. Maybe having a son who was ashamed of me was better than having no son at all. It's a Thursday morning in November when everything changes. I'm at the office early, reviewing contracts for holiday parties, when my phone rings. The caller ID shows a number I don't recognize, but the area code is from Springfield, David City. Joyce Morrison Catering, This is Joyce. Mrs. Morrison? The voice is female, young, uncertain. This is Amanda, Amanda Morrison, David's wife. I nearly dropped the phone. In all the months of silence, I never expected to hear from her. She's the last person I thought would reach out. The woman whose family was too refined to tolerate my existence. Amanda. I keep my voice neutral, professional. How can I help you? I was wondering if we could meet, to talk. There are some things I need to tell you, some things David doesn't know I'm aware of. My heart starts racing. What kind of things? It would be better if we could speak in person. I could drive to Millbrook this afternoon if you're available. I know you have no reason to want to see me, but please, Mrs. Morrison. It's important. There's something in her voice, a vulnerability I never heard during our brief encounter at the country club. The polished socialite facade seems to have cracked, revealing someone younger and more uncertain than the woman who once looked at me with such disdain. Why now, Amanda? It's been 6 months since the wedding. Why are you calling me now? Because I found something. Something David's been hiding. Something that changes everything I thought I knew about our marriage, about his family, about you. I close my eyes, trying to imagine what she could have discovered. Amanda, I don't think this is a good idea. Whatever problems you and David are having, I don't think I'm the right person to help. Please. Her voice breaks slightly. I'm not asking you to help fix anything. I'm asking you to let me apologize, to let me tell you the truth about what really happened, about what my family really said, about what I really knew. Against my better judgment, I find myself agreeing to meet her at a coffee shop on the outskirts of Millbrook at 2 o'clock. I spend the rest of the morning in a state of nervous energy, unable to concentrate on work, replaying every interaction I've ever had with Amanda, trying to imagine what she could possibly want to tell me. Ruth thinks I'm making a mistake. Joyce, this woman treated you like dirt. She stood by while her husband erased you from his life. Why would you want to hear anything she has to say? Because maybe I need closure, I tell her. Maybe I need to understand what really happened, even if it doesn't change anything. Or maybe she's going to try to manipulate you into forgiving David, into accepting some new version of their terms for your existence in their lives. Ruth could be right, but something in Amanda's voice made me believe this was different. She sounded broken, desperate, nothing like the confident woman who once dismissed my hotel as beneath her notice. I arrive at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and choose a table in the corner where we can speak privately. When Amanda walks in, I barely recognize her. Gone is the perfectly styled hair, the designer clothes, the air of superiority that once surrounded her like expensive perfume. She looks thin, almost gaunt, with dark circles under her eyes and the kind of exhaustion that comes from sleepless nights and crushing worry. She spots me immediately and approaches the table hesitantly, as if she's not sure I won't get up and leave. Mrs. Morrison, thank you for coming. Joyce, I correct her. Please, sit down. She orders a coffee with shaking hands, and I wait while she composes herself. Up close, she looks even worse than she did from across the room. Her skin is pale, her clothes are wrinkled, and there's a haunted quality to her eyes that speaks of recent trauma. I need to start by apologizing, she says without preamble, for the way I treated you at the hotel, for the things I said, for the way I looked at you. There's no excuse for my behavior. I study her face, looking for signs of insincerity, but she seems genuinely distressed. Amanda, what's this really about? Why are you here? She reaches into her purse and pulls out a manila envelope, placing it on the table between us. 3 weeks ago, David left his laptop open while he was in the shower. I wasn't snooping, I was just trying to check my email, but I accidentally clicked on the wrong folder. I found these. She slides the envelope toward me. They're emails, Mrs. Morrison. Emails between David and my father, going back 2 years. Before we were engaged, before we were even serious. I don't touch the envelope. Amanda, I don't think I should be reading David's private correspondence. They're about you, she says quietly. About the lies he told us. About the things he said about his family. About the deal he made with my father. What deal? Amanda's hands are trembling as she opens the envelope and pulls out several printed pages. My father was very specific about what kind of family he wanted his daughter to marry into. Old money, established connections, the right kind of background. When David and I started getting serious, my father had him investigated. I feel a chill run down my spine. Investigated? It's what my father does. He's very protective of the family reputation, very careful about who he allows into our circle. The investigation turned up information about you, about your business, about David's real background. She hands me the first email, and I read it despite my reservations. It's from David to her father, dated almost 2 years ago. Mr. Blackwell, I understand your concerns about my family background. You're right that my mother's current situation doesn't align with your family's expectations. However, I believe we can find a mutually beneficial solution. My mother has been quite generous with financial support over the years, and I'm confident she would be willing to help establish the kind of background that would be more suitable for your daughter's husband. In return, I would be prepared to limit contact with her to avoid any potential embarrassment or complications. I read the email twice, trying to process what I'm seeing. David didn't just decide to hide me from Amanda's family. He negotiated my erasure as part of a business deal. There are more, Amanda says, her voice barely above a whisper. Keep reading. The next email is from her father to David, outlining specific requirements for their arrangement. David would need to establish a new family history, complete with documentation of his refined upbringing. He would need to ensure that his mother remained completely separate from his new life. In return, Amanda's father would help David advance his career and integrate into their social circle. The third email is the most devastating. It's David's response, agreeing to all terms and adding his own suggestions. I think the fictional aunt story would work well. I can provide details about her education and social standing that would satisfy your requirements. As for my mother, she's quite attached to her small business, and unlikely to cause problems as long as she's kept unaware of the arrangement. She's very trusting, and tends to accept whatever explanations I provide. Trusting. He called me trusting, as if my love and faith in him were character flaws to be exploited. Amanda, why are you showing me this? She wipes tears from her eyes with a crumpled tissue. Because I need you to know that I didn't know. When David told us about his aunt, about losing his parents, about having no family, I believed him. I felt sorry for him. I thought I was marrying an orphan who'd overcome tremendous odds to build a successful life. But you knew something was wrong at the hotel. You treated me like... I thought you were lying, she interrupts. When you said the hotel was yours, when you talked about being David's mother, I thought you were some kind of con artist trying to take advantage of him. My father had taught me to be suspicious of people who claimed connections to our family, people who might be looking for money or status. I stare at her, trying to process this information. So when you called me a servant, when you told me to get out, I thought I was protecting David from someone who was trying to scam him. I thought you were pretending to be his mother to get close to our family. Fresh tears spill down her cheeks. Mrs. Morrison, I thought you were dead. David told us you died when he was in college, that Aunt Margaret raised him after that. I grieved for you. I actually cried when he told me about losing his mother so young. The absurdity of it hits me like a slap. Amanda cried for my fictional death while I sat at home missing the son who had killed me off to impress her family. How did you find out the truth? The emails were just the beginning. Once I started looking, I found bank records showing payments to you going back years. I found a birth certificate with your name as his mother. I found school records listing you as his emergency contact. She laughs bitterly. I found a photo in his old college textbooks, a picture of the two of you at his law school graduation. You looked so proud, so happy. He looked like he adored you. I remember that day, remember how David held me close for that photo. How he whispered that he couldn't have done it without me. It was one of the last times I felt like we were truly connected, like he was genuinely grateful for everything I'd sacrificed for him. Amanda, what do you want from me? Why are you telling me all this? She takes a shaky breath. Because I confronted David about the emails last week. I told him I knew the truth about you, about the lies he'd told my family, about the deal he'd made with my father. And what did he say? He said it was none of my business. He said what happened between him and his mother was private, that I had no right to interfere. He said if I couldn't accept the way he'd handled the situation, maybe I wasn't the right wife for him. I feel a familiar stab of pain. Even when caught in his lies, even when confronted with evidence of his betrayal, David's first instinct was to blame someone else, to make himself the victim. He threatened to leave me, Amanda continues. Said that if I couldn't support his decisions about his family, if I was going to cause problems for his career by stirring up drama, then maybe we'd made a mistake. And what did you tell him? I told him he was right. We had made a mistake. She looks at me directly for the first time since sitting down. I filed for divorce yesterday. The words hang in the air between us. Amanda has left David, has blown up her perfect marriage, has chosen truth over the comfortable lies they'd built their life on. Amanda, I'm sorry. I know this must be incredibly difficult for you. Don't apologize to me, she says fiercely. I'm the one who should be apologizing. I'm the one who benefited from your erasure, who lived in the house that your money helped buy, who wore jewelry that your sacrifices paid for. My father may have initiated the arrangement, but I was happy to go along with it as long as it gave me the perfect husband with the perfect background. I want to comfort her, but I'm not sure how. This woman was complicit in my son's betrayal, even if she didn't know the full truth. She stood by while David lied about my existence, while he rewrote our family history to make himself more palatable to her family. What will you do now? I don't know. My father is furious. Says I'm throwing away everything he worked to build for our family. He's threatening to cut me off financially, to remove me from his will. My mother won't speak to me. She laughs bitterly. It seems that choosing honesty over appearances runs in the family. Despite everything, I feel a flicker of sympathy for her. She's lost her husband, her family's support, her entire way of life, all because she chose to confront the truth, instead of living with comfortable lies. Amanda, can I ask you something? She nods. When you found out the truth about me, about what David had done, why didn't you just pretend you'd never seen the emails? Why didn't you go back to your perfect life and forget what you'd learned? She's quiet for a long moment, staring into our coffee cup. Because I kept thinking about that day at the hotel, about the way you looked when I called you a servant, when I told you to get out, about the dignity you maintained even when I was treating you terribly. She looks up at me. You were so calm, so composed. You didn't argue or make excuses or try to prove yourself. You just stated the truth and let it stand. I remember that moment, remember the shock on her face when I told her the hotel was mine. I realized that you were everything David had told me his fictional aunt was. Dignified, accomplished, strong. You were exactly the kind of woman my father claimed to respect, except you'd built your success yourself instead of inheriting it. Her voice breaks. And my husband was so ashamed of you that he'd rather pretend you were dead than admit you existed. We sit in silence for several minutes, both lost in our thoughts. Finally, Amanda speaks again. Mrs. Morrison, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you consider meeting with David? He doesn't know I've contacted you, doesn't know I'm here. But I think if he could see how much damage his lies have caused, if he could understand what he's thrown away. Amanda, David has made his choice. He's made it multiple times, in fact. He chose your family's approval over his mother's love. He chose a fictional background over his real history. He chose to sacrifice our relationship rather than risk his social standing. But maybe if he knew that I know the truth, if he realized that the whole foundation of our marriage was built on lies. He already knows that. You confronted him, remember? And his response was to threaten to leave you rather than acknowledge his mistakes. Amanda's face crumples. I know. I keep thinking there must be some way to fix this. Some way to undo the damage. The damage isn't something that can be undone, Amanda. Trust, once broken this completely, doesn't just heal because someone wishes it would. So you'll never forgive him? Never give him another chance? I consider her question carefully. Amanda, forgiveness isn't the same thing as reconciliation. I can forgive David for the pain he's caused me, for the lies he's told, for the years he's wasted pretending to be someone else. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to accept unacceptable behavior. It doesn't mean I have to welcome him back into my life so he can hurt me again. But he's your son. Yes, he is. And that's exactly why his betrayal cuts so deep. A stranger's rejection would sting. A friend's abandonment would hurt. But a son's systematic erasure of his mother? That's a wound that goes to the bone. Amanda nods slowly, as if she's beginning to understand the full scope of what David has done. What will you tell him about our meeting? I don't know, part of me wants to protect him from the consequences of his actions, to let him go on believing that you're just being stubborn and unreasonable. But I think I'm done protecting people from the truth. She gathers the emails and puts them back in the envelope. Mrs. Morrison, I want you to know that meeting you, really meeting you, has been one of the few bright spots in this whole horrible situation. David described you as simple, unsophisticated, someone who wouldn't understand the complexities of his new life. But you're none of those things. You're wise and strong and gracious, and he's an idiot for not seeing what he had. Thank you, Amanda. That means more than you know. She stands to leave, then pauses. Mrs. Morrison, can I ask you something? Do you think there's any chance David might come to his senses? That he might realize what he's lost and try to make things right? I think about the boy David used to be, the young man who once promised never to forget where he came from. Then I think about the man who negotiated my erasure like a business deal, who threatened to leave his wife rather than acknowledge his lies. I don't know, Amanda. I honestly don't know if that boy still exists somewhere inside the man David has become. But I do know this. If he ever does come to his senses, he's going to have to prove it with actions, not just words. And he's going to have to do it without any guarantee that I'll be willing to listen. Amanda nods and walks away, leaving me alone with my coffee and the weight of everything I've learned. David didn't just choose Amanda's family over me in a moment of weakness or fear. He calculated my worth against his ambitions and found me lacking. He traded my love for their approval as coldly and deliberately as he might negotiate any other business deal. The worst part is that he was right about one thing. I was trusting. I did accept his explanations, did make excuses for his behavior, did believe the best of him even when the evidence suggested otherwise. But I'm not that woman anymore. I'm someone who knows her worth, who refuses to accept crumbs when she deserves the whole meal, who won't pretend to be grateful for scraps of affection from someone who should be offering unconditional love. David made his choice, and I've made mine. The only question now is whether he'll ever realize what that choice has cost us both. 2 years have passed since Amanda walked out of that coffee shop and out of David's life. 2 years of building something I never expected. Peace. The kind of deep, settled contentment that comes from living authentically, from no longer contorting yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. Joyce's catering has expanded beyond my wildest dreams. We now employ 15 people and have catered events as far as 4 states away. Last month, we were featured in a regional magazine as one of the top small businesses in the area. The article called me an entrepreneur who built success through determination and heart, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely proud of what I'd accomplished. Ruth and I have become true partners in every sense, and she's helped me transform not just the business but my entire perspective on what success looks like. We've started a scholarship fund for single mothers who want to start their own businesses, turning my experience into something that can help others. The house on Maple Street has become a gathering place for friends, for employees celebrating milestones, for neighbors who know they can always find a warm welcome and excellent food. It's filled with laughter and conversation and the kind of genuine relationships I never had time to nurture when I was focused solely on being the perfect mother to an ungrateful son. I haven't heard from David directly since that final phone call over 2 years ago, but news has a way of traveling in small communities. I know from mutual acquaintances that his divorce from Amanda was finalized, that he left his job at the Blackwell firm, that he moved back to a smaller city where nobody knows about his fictional family history. Ellen tells me he looks older, more worn down, like someone carrying a weight he can't set down. Part of me feels sorry for him, for the life he destroyed chasing after approval from people who were never worthy of the sacrifices he made. But mostly I feel nothing. The desperate love that once consumed me. The constant worry about his happiness. The willingness to accept any treatment as long as it meant staying connected to him. All of that has been replaced by something much healthier. Indifference. It's a Tuesday morning in March, when everything comes full circle. I'm at the office reviewing proposals for spring weddings when my assistant knocks on my door. "Joyce, there's someone here to see you. He says he's your son." My heart doesn't race the way it once would have. Instead, I feel a curious calm, as if I've been expecting this moment without realizing it. "Send him in, please." David enters my office, and I'm struck by how much he's changed. The expensive suits are gone, replaced by simple khakis and a button-down shirt. His hair is beginning to thin at the temples, and there are lines around his eyes that weren't there before. He looks like a man who's learned some hard lessons about the cost of his choices. "Hello, Mom." "David." I gesture to the chair across from my desk. "Please, sit." He settles into the chair carefully, as if he's afraid it might break beneath him. For several moments, neither of us speaks. He looks around my office, taking in the photos of successful events, the awards on the walls, the evidence of a thriving business built without his knowledge or approval. "You've done well for yourself," he says finally. "Yes, I have." He winces slightly at my tone, which is neither warm nor cold but simply neutral. "Mom, I came here to apologize. To tell you that I know I made terrible mistakes, that I hurt you in ways that were inexcusable." I study his face, looking for signs of the manipulation I once would have missed. The calculated emotion designed to achieve a specific outcome. But what I see instead is genuine remorse, the kind of deep regret that comes from living with the consequences of your actions. "What changed your mind, David?" He runs his hands through his hair, a gesture I remember from his childhood when he was nervous or ashamed. "Everything fell apart after Amanda left. The Blackwells made sure I was blacklisted from every firm in Springfield. I lost the apartment, the car, the life I thought I'd built. I had to start over in a place where nobody knew me, where I couldn't trade on connections or family name. And that taught you what, exactly? That everything I'd worked for, everything I thought was so important, was built on lies. That I'd thrown away the only real relationship I had for the approval of people who turned their backs on me the moment I was no longer useful to them." I nod slowly. "Go on." "I got a job at a small firm in Riverside, doing basic legal work, nothing glamorous. My landlord is an old woman named Mrs. Patterson who reminds me a lot of you, actually. She's tough but fair, doesn't tolerate nonsense, but she's also incredibly kind. She makes dinner for her tenants sometimes, checks on us when we're sick, treats us like family even though we're just renters." David pauses, his voice becoming thick with emotion. "One day she was talking about her son who lives in California. She said she hadn't seen him in 3 years because he's too busy with his important job to visit. She said it like it was normal, like she'd accepted that's just how things are, but I could see how much it hurt her. And you saw yourself in her son." "I saw myself in her son, and I saw you in her. This woman who deserved so much better from the child she'd raised and loved and sacrificed for." He looks at me directly for the first time since entering the room. "Mom, I've spent the last 2 years trying to figure out how I became the kind of person who could treat his own mother the way I treated you. And I think I finally understand. Tell me, I was so afraid of not being good enough that I convinced myself the problem was where I came from instead of who I was becoming. I thought if I could just erase my background, create a new history, surround myself with the right people, I'd finally feel worthy. But all I did was become someone I didn't recognize, someone who could betray the person who loved him most." David's voice breaks completely now, and tears start flowing down his cheeks. "Mom, I told people you were dead because I was dying inside. I was so ashamed of who I'd become that I couldn't bear to have you see it. I couldn't face the disappointment in your eyes when you realized your son had turned into someone who cared more about appearances than character. I watch him cry, and I feel nothing. No urge to comfort him, no desire to tell him it's okay, no impulse to minimize his mistakes to make him feel better. The mother who would have done all those things died the day he told me I wasn't invited to his wedding. David, I appreciate you coming here, I appreciate the apology, but I need you to understand something. This doesn't change anything between us. He looks up sharply, hope and fear warring in his expression. What do you mean? I mean that I forgive you. I forgive you for the lies, for the betrayal, for the years of taking me for granted. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean we go back to having a relationship as if none of this happened. But Mom, I've changed. I've learned from my mistakes. I understand now what I threw away. Have you? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've learned that betraying your family has consequences you don't like. You've learned that the people you thought were worth impressing weren't worth the sacrifices you made. But have you learned that what you did to me was wrong regardless of how it turned out for you? David is quiet for a long moment. Yes, I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you in ways that can't be undone. Then you'll understand why I can't welcome you back into my life. David, for 28 years I loved you unconditionally. I supported your dreams, celebrated your successes, helped you through your failures. And the moment it became inconvenient for you to have a mother like me, you erased me from your existence. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm not finished. You didn't just hurt me, David. You taught me something about myself that I needed to learn. You taught me that I had been so focused on being the perfect mother that I forgot to be a whole person. You taught me that I deserved better than to be someone's shameful secret, someone's backup plan, someone's convenient source of support. I stand up and walk to the window, looking out at the town I've called home for over 20 years, the place where I built a life and a business and a reputation I can be proud of. The last 2 years have been the happiest of my adult life, David. I've built friendships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I've expanded my business beyond anything I thought possible. I've learned to value myself the way I always valued you. Mom, please. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. I'll do whatever it takes to prove I've changed, to show you that I understand what I lost. I turn back to face him. David, what you lost wasn't just my love. What you lost was the chance to be the kind of man your father would have been proud of. Michael would never have understood the choices you made, the lies you told, the way you betrayed your family for social advancement. At the mention of his father, David breaks down completely. I know, God, I know. I think about Dad every day, about what he'd say if he knew what I'd become. Your father loved you not because of what you achieved or who you impressed, but because of who you were. He would have been proud of you no matter what career you chose, what neighborhood you lived in, who you married, but he would have been ashamed of the man who denied his mother's existence. David nods through his tears. I know I failed him too, so what do you want from me, David? What do you expect this conversation to accomplish? He struggles to find the words. I want to try to make things right. I want to find a way to honor the sacrifices you made, to be worthy of the love you gave me. I want to be the son you deserved instead of the one you got. That's admirable, David. But it's too late for that. The words hit him like a physical blow. Too late? You can't undo the past. You can't take back the lies, the betrayal, the years of taking me for granted. You can't resurrect the relationship we had before you decided I wasn't good enough to acknowledge publicly. So that's it? There's no possibility of forgiveness, of starting over? I already told you I forgive you. But starting over? David, I don't want to start over with you. The relationship we had was unhealthy for both of us. I gave too much, you took too much, and neither of us was honest about what was happening. I sit back down, looking at my son with something approaching pity. David, I hope you find peace. I hope you build a life you can be proud of, relationships based on honesty and mutual respect. I hope you become the kind of man who would never treat another person the way you treated me. But I want to become that man for you. I want to prove to you that I can change. Then prove it to yourself. Prove it to the people in your new life, the ones who don't know your history. Prove it by being the kind of person who shows up for the people who matter to him, who values character over appearances, who never again chooses status over family. David stares at me. finally understanding that this isn't a negotiation, that there's no argument he can make that will change my mind. Will I ever see you again? I don't know, David. Maybe someday, when enough time has passed, when you've built a life you can truly be proud of, when you no longer need my forgiveness to feel whole. Maybe then we can have coffee and talk about your work, your life, the person you've become. But it won't be the relationship we had before, and it won't be because you're my son. Then why would it be? Because we're two adults who once meant something to each other, who shared a history, who can look back on the past without bitterness or regret. Because you'll have learned to value yourself for who you are, rather than who you think you should be. David stands slowly, like an old man carrying a great weight. Mom, I love you. I've always loved you, even when I was too cowardly to show it. I know you did, David. In your way, I know you loved me. But love without respect, without honesty, without commitment isn't enough. It never was. He walks to the door, then turns back one last time. If I do change, if I become the kind of man Dad would be proud of, will you be able to see it? Will you know? I smile for the first time since he entered my office. David, if you truly change, if you become the person you're capable of being, everyone will see it. You won't need my validation or approval. You'll know it yourself. After he leaves, I sit quietly in my office for a long time. I feel no regret about what I've said, no urge to run after him and offer comfort or false hope. For the first time in my relationship with my son, I've been completely honest about my feelings, my boundaries, my expectations. Ruth finds me there an hour later, staring out the window at the spring afternoon. "How are you feeling?" she asks gently. "Free," I say, and I mean it. For the first time in 30 years, I feel completely free. That evening, I call Ellen to tell her about David's visit. She listens without interrupting, then asks the question I knew was coming. "Do you think you were too hard on him?" "No," I say without hesitation. "I think I was exactly as hard as I needed to be. David didn't come here because he'd realized he loved me or missed me. He came because his life fell apart, and he finally understood the cost of his choices. That's not the same thing as genuine remorse. But what if he really has changed? Then he'll prove it through his actions, not his words. And if he does, if he becomes the kind of person who deserves respect and love, then maybe someday we'll have a different conversation. But it won't be because I owe him anything as his mother. It will be because he's earned it as a human being." 3 months later, I receive a card in the mail. It's a simple thank you note. Not from David, but from Mrs. Patterson, his landlord. She writes that David helped her through a medical emergency, drove her to doctor's appointments, cooked meals when she was too weak to care for herself. She says he never talks about his family, but she can tell he was raised by someone who taught him right from wrong, someone who would be proud of the man he's becoming. I smile as I read her words, then put the card away in my desk drawer. Not because I'm proud of David, but because I'm proud of the woman who raised him to know better, even when he chose to forget those lessons for a while. I am Joyce Morrison, and I am enough. I always was. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.